Hey, internet. Okay, so doing a quick no charge form review for Kristopher from the Disc Golf Form Check page. I am doing these reviews for two reasons. One is to give back to the community that is Disc Golf Form Check on Facebook. Um, that is where I got started. I got started coaching, doing free reviews for people on that page. So it's important to me to give back to that community that gave me endless supply and continues to give me an endless supply of people who want their form reviewed. So thank you to the admins and the community as a whole. That's reason number one. Reason number two is to promote my personal coaching, which I do as a paid service. So I'm happy to do a certain number of reviews here for free per week to give back to the community as well as promote myself. If you get one of these free reviews and want to continue with me, your option is to hop onto the Patreon. There are three different tiers, as well as the tip jar tier if you just want to send $5 at me for because you're nice. Um, that's the path to ongoing coaching with me. Is you need to sign up on the Patreon. So if that's of interest to you, please check it out. If that's not financially available to you, you are welcome and encouraged to drop a comment on one of my posts. There are two. I will try to make another one in the near future for those free reviews. Okay, so let's take a look first what Kristopher said. He said, "Hey Owen, I've watched a couple of videos from you and just happened to come across your page. Could you break down what you see wrong or what can improve? Right now, I'm hitting around 380 max distance. So 380 is no joke. That's pretty solid. So let's take a look at what Kristopher is doing and see if we can help out. Okay, here is a park that Kristopher is in. There's Kristopher. Okay, so 380, like, there's not going to be any glaring errors because 380 is pretty darn solid. I'll just play it before I talk about it. So, highly functional throw, mostly no glaring errors. There's only one thing that I see that's a kind of big deal. So, we're just going to address that. So, kind of big X step. That's okay though. A lot of people get away with that. You can't really see the beginning of the problem from this angle, so we'll look at it from the back angle. But basically what I'm looking at is the back leg from here. So I'm not super sure on this, but this is my current theory, is that this knee being past the toe is kind of a problem, and that indicates that you're gonna get stuck on this foot, which does happen. So let's go forward. So as we go forward, and the toe being turned this far back, I don't really like that because it just makes it harder to get the front leg into the positions we want to be in. A lot of pro players do this. Almost everyone in a distance competition does that. But I feel like there's really two different modes. There's trying to learn how to brace well, and then there's I know how to brace well, I don't care, I'm going to do what I want. And, you know, maybe we're already bracing well because we're throwing 380. Like, that's totally respectable. But this is suspect because it allows the knee to go over here where it's too far out of line. And then what we get from that is we get this. So the foot is rocking up onto the heel. The knee is, can't draw, the knee is locked out and straight. Wow. Internet. The knee is locked out and straight. There is a line that is not drawn by a child. And now this is anchored, which means the shin bone is anchored, which means the femur is anchored, which means the left side of the pelvis is anchored, which means it can't snap forward towards the camera, which means we can't get hip torque. So the whole point of the brace is nullified by this leg being in this position. So let me show you what I mean. It's subtle, it's hard to see, but as we click pause forward, that hip is still back. The hip is still away from us. This hip is closer than this hip. So the hips haven't snapped at all. They're staying. I can't even draw it because it's perspective. Like, the hips are flat, but this one is farther away and this one is closer. And we're at our center position right here. So the hips are not meaningfully contributing to the throw. So 380 is coming from stopping here and sending the arm, which, you know, like I said, is very respectable. That's a great distance to be at, but we're getting there the hard way. We're just getting there with arm. We're not using our hips yet. So that's what we need to work on. Let me bring up the other clip. Oh, I have it right here. All I need to do is click on this little thing on the bottom. Okay, so here's a back view. One additional thing we can see here that's very much in the same realm. So there's initial step. Nope, that's the initial step. There's the X step. And then there's the throw. So on the X step, we'll click pause and mark it. Man, it's so subtle. It doesn't look, I hate stuff like this because I see it and I'm like, oh, I need to point that out. That's a huge thing. And then I go back and look at it and it looks tiny. But that's what I'm looking at right there. So the foot sets down and already it's happening. Jeez. Okay, so it's not like egregious, but it is happening. So I think it's worth flagging. So the foot sets down on that angle. And then as we click pause forward, it slips to that angle. So that means the center of gravity is continuing to pass the ground contact. So the center of gravity is going forward and this foot has to swivel to adjust. That's not ideal because we want that ground contact to really be meaningful and we want to keep the leg under us. So let's flip the camera around and start to debrief all of that. But really good news. That's the only major problem. It's just this rear leg stuff. And then everything else is really pretty solid. Sure, we could find like little nitpicky stuff to clean up with the swing plane and blah, blah, but that's for later. Just the leg is what we need to worry about. Okay, so we're getting here. And then as the center of gravity continues forward, the foot slips out. And we don't like slip because we want meaningful ground contact. Meaningful ground contact is the name of the game. This ground contact on the X step needs to be meaningful because it is helping you guide your weight forward in an intelligent way into the brace. This ground contact is relevant because it needs to be stopping all of your momentum, giving you a place on the ground that's not going to slip, to fire your front quad, to clear your front hip out of the way and create that hip torque that we were talking about. So the hip torque we want is this. Front hip is made stable by the ground. Rear hip has momentum, or in the case of a one-leg drill, potential energy. And then that potential energy is turned into momentum by gravity and it creates hip torque. So the hip torque happens because this hip is still. This one drops, this one still, torque. If they both drop, I wind up, they both drop, no torque. No throw. So we need to create hip torque. So what's happening in your throw is this foot slipping out, you're rocking onto the heel, this leg is getting straight. At that point, this turns into a dead weight anchor that stops this hip from going forward. So no matter what you do correctly on the front side, this can't move and your throw happens without this moving. It is moving. You do get the leg out of the way and get it to where it can come under and allow the hip to move, but it's too little too late. We need the power to come from this hip, boom, to start the kinematic sequence. So that's what we need from a big theory standpoint. How do we actually do it is another question. So at a simple level, we don't want the leg here. We want the leg to stay under us and stay where it can bend if it needs to. So, a couple ways to do this. There's the fix it on the flyaway, and then there's the rebuild the feeling of the throw from a one leg position and then insert that back into your throw. Realistically, you should do both approaches in tandem and then try to merge them eventually. But conceptually, what we want is this, where your leg position is behind you, not towards the back of the T-pad. Because here, this hip can't move. I can't rotate this hip forward. If I get here, now I can rotate this hip forward. I can bend my knee, and even with my knee straight, I can pop the hip forward, and it's not going to have to drag the leg with it. It will have to drag the leg with it eventually. If I throw too hard, grab a disc. If I'm in this position and I throw too hard, watch what happens. I spin out. So the spin happens, that's my pelvis rotating and dragging the leg with it. So that will happen. That is the point where your hips start to slow down. So there's this point here where your hips can go quickly and then they start to slow down. We want that. That's what makes the kinematic sequence work. The hips need to start slowing down so that the shoulders can speed up. The shoulders need to start slowing down so that the elbow can speed up, and so on down the chain. That's how whip mechanics work. You don't have to understand that. You just have to make it work. So we want this position because it allows the hips to be the initial power source, and then power is added to that by the spinal twist, power is added to that by the elbow drive, power is added to that by the elbow hinge and the finger pivot. So the build it from the ground option is find the one leg position. There's a drill video called the one leg regression on my channel. That's where I would start with figuring this out. But you want to be here and be able to have the hip motion power the throw. So it's not leaving my hip back, throwing with my arm. It's I'm throwing with the hip, and my arm is an extension of the hip. That can't happen from here. You can't move the hip, so you have to throw with arm. So that's the ground up option, starting from one leg. So you're building the end of the throw. This is the end of the throw. And then you're going to get into the end of the throw. The way to conceptualize it in terms of what you would change in your walk up to make it work is start here. So your feet together, knees bent, stand still. One step, excuse me. And you're going to lift up your plant leg, stretch to your plant, and then you're going to drive that heel down when you shift the weight but not the pressure. So shifting the weight looks like this. Although my weight stacks on the front foot, you're not doing that. But you're shifting the pressure without shifting the weight, and it should make your sock slide off thusly. So at the same time you're driving that heel down, you're driving this knee forward. It's not really driving, it just happens. But there's this space between my knees, and it's basically staying there. So I'm drifting into this position where my knee is coming in a little bit. That's why we need that ground contact under the foot to stay there. If it slips away, then our leg's out of position and we can't fix it. So we need our leg to stay under us to where it has somewhere to go. The opposite is this, where it has nowhere to go and it has to somehow slide and we have to find some way to turn it over. That's awkward, that's slow, that doesn't allow the hip to move. If we get here, then we can allow, boom, the hip to come forward in the way that we need to power our throw. So that's it. Just fixing the rear leg is what I would suggest. And again, two approaches. You can start from the one leg regression. That'll teach you a little bit of what the feel is like for the timing and the sequencing of how we want your throw to work, where this hip can move. Start there and then go to this drill and just feel out the position. Can I get this rear knee to come with me so that I don't end up locked out of this rear leg where my hip can't move? Okay, thanks so much, Internet. Go check out the Patreon if you like this style of coaching. this is pretty much exactly what I would do for my first review at the $50 here. So if you want one of these, go check out the Patreon and sign up. All right. Thanks, Internet. See you next time.